Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Critical Thinking and Problem Solving Masterclass. We're going to do a slow start to give more people an opportunity to join our session. So we'll give it another minute or so. But welcome to the session. Thank you very much for investing in yourself today and bringing yourself into the session on a Saturday. Not too sure what the weather is like in your areas, but please do say hello to us, use your chat box, and please do chat to us and tell us where you're from. And well done on taking this opportunity to invest in yourself a little bit more. Just a brief little introduction of myself. I have spent many years in the corporate world, and then a few years ago decided to spend the rest of my season of my life in the learning and growth and development of people. So that is what I do. I design learning interventions and I facilitate interventions, which includes lecturing and then doing leadership development work. And our passion areas are all around coaching and emotional intelligence, and just helping people to really have hope and inspiration and wanting to be the best version of themselves in whichever capacity that might be. So yes, welcome. I see more and more people are adding in a little bit in the chat box, and I think we can get on to a slow start. I'd like to invite you, please, for this session to not just look at it as a lecture or an input of information. Maybe grab a pen, a paper, and start to think about what critical thinking and problem solving means to you and how you go about applying it. So don't just see this as a topic or a skill that you need to study or that you need for work, but rather see this as this is a life skill that you would apply in any sphere of your life, not just in a work kind of environment. So I really trust that you will take something away with you today that you can apply in whatever your circumstances might well be. So this masterclass is about mindset. Actually, when you think about critical thinking and problem solving, a lot of it has got to do with how you go about thinking about things. So your mindset around critical thinking is what we're going to spend quite a bit of time on today, because the skill sets are the processes. They are processes that say this is systematically how you go about doing problem solving. So we're not going to spend time on the processes today. We're rather going to spend time on you and how you go about applying critical thinking and problem solving. So we spent a little bit of time chatting about what are the skills required going forward. Where do you see yourself in terms of applying critical thinking and problem solving? And then we're going to do some 6 practical tools, little tips and tools as to how you could work today on your critical thinking. And then we'll wrap it up again by just taking it full circle to say, right, mindset. How do I transfer my mindset about critical thinking and problem solving into my skill set? How I apply it when I leave this session. Okay, great. So let us move on to the first section, and we ask ourselves the question, why? What is this all about? Why critical thinking? Where does it come from? And let's chat a little bit about VUCA. And I'm not sure how many of you just think about that. Have you been working with VUCA in your studies, or where you're working? But VUCA has been around for a number of years, and it helps us to sort of understand how our world has changed and continues to change. I mean, we only need the example now of the pandemic to let us actually understand. And the digitalization and technology and all of these things that have started happening, that has changed the way that we actually work, and that helps us to understand. The next generation of leaders, you who are studying and looking to the future, are living and going to be working in a much faster, more fluid, and a much more disrupted world. So we've experienced quite a bit of disruption in this last while, and an escalation of disruption. And that's really the world that we're going to be living in going forward. And we ask ourselves the question, we stop and we ask and we say, right, how am I a future leader in the world, globally, in society? If you're going to thrive in your career, and if you're going to stand up as a leader, then critical skills that seem to come to the fore is really our ability to be able to collaborate with each other, to work with different people across all boundaries, and our ability to be able to solve common problems that we experience all over. Those are going to be critical. So VUCA tells us that we come from an environment that we shift from stability, we shift to volatility. There are many changes that are happening, and they seem to escalate quite a lot. We shift from a world that is very certain to a world that now becomes much more uncertain, and there's much less predictability about what is going on around us. We go from knowing, from simplicity, and now things are very much more complex in the way that we go about doing things. And then we also shift from clarity to a lot of ambiguity. And these require of us as future leaders. And remember, when I talk about future leaders, a leader is you. It is anyone who has the ability to inspire and to have influence and impact on the lives of another, whether it be one person or many people. That makes you a leader, not limited just to a working environment, but you have the ability to influence in your communities, in all of the environments that you are, then you are a leader. So when we talk about a future leader and the impact that you can have, it shows you how critical these skills are, helping people to create a vision in this area of uncertainty, helping people to understand that we don't understand everything, providing some forms of clarity with the limited information we now have available, or the limited experiences, because things are new and different, and also agility, helping ourselves and people around us to become agile and resilient to the fact that our life is not as simple and clear and structured as the way that it was before. And those require some very unique skills for us to be able to lead into the future. And if you have a look at the model in terms of what a 21st century learner looks like, we're saying it's a combination of an entrepreneurial spirit, even though you work in a corporate environment. It's a combination of becoming an engaged thinker, really applying your thinking, and then becoming an ethical citizen. And critical tools that come out of that is our ability to collaborate and our leadership, our critical thinking and problem solving. And remember, we're zoning into that particular area today. Our creativity and our innovation, social responsibility, communication, digital literacy, and our lifelong learning, curiosity, the need to do lifelong learning. And the four most critical 4C skills that come to the fore is critical thinking, as you can see there, which we are going to focus on today. But if you combine critical thinking with our ability to collaborate, and in fact, if you want to do critical thinking and problem solving in today's complex environment, you need to collaborate with other people to be able to do that well. Communication, more so than ever. And here we talk more and more about our ability to have conversations with people around us in collaboration. That gives us also much of the information that we need to be able to to look at problems from different scenarios, and then our creativity and our innovation. And those are the 4 C's that we look at as the most critical combination of skills that you can acquire beyond the technical skills that you are acquiring to be able to do a particular job per se in a particular profession. The universal global tools and skills that will make you that future leader is really your ability to apply great thinking in collaboration, communicating with people, and using creativity and innovation to come up with new and different ways of doing things. So let's have a look at what do we mean when we talk about critical thinking and problem solving. So the question you could ask yourself is, are they exactly the same thing, or are they different? And here we go. Critical thinking is very much about how you go about, it's the think, yes, it's how you think about things. And that includes your observation. How do you observe and notice things and look at different things from different perspectives? How you analyze information, how you gather and analyze information, and then how you are able to draw conclusions, inferences from what you have available around you, and then how you are able to share that information in collaboration with others. And then also part of that is then the problem solving. So you can see problem solving is related to critical thinking. The thinking is how you go about doing it. The problem solving is the process that you apply systematically. One, you have a problem and you define it. 2, you brainstorm, you look at tools and techniques in terms of alternatives of what could actually happen. 3, you then use that analysis to pick a solution. You look at pros and cons, pick a solution. 4, you implement the solution. And 5, you review the results. But to do all of those effectively, there's a couple of very critical tools that help you to follow that process effectively. And what I'd like you to do for a start, how do you rate your skills? Pop it down on a paper quickly. Take a scale from a 1 to a 5 and ask yourself, if I look at that definition of critical thinking, my process of how I think about things. Secondly, the processes that I follow in order to solve a problem. And thirdly, how decisive am I? Do I make decisions? Do I use my critical thinking and my problem-solving capability, and then do I actually make decisions? Just rate yourself 1 to a 5 on each of those 3 independent components: critical thinking, problem-solving, and decision-making. Where are you right now? And how do you feel? Are you applying those particular skills right now? Just rate those and let's see where you place yourself in terms of those. Critical thinking and problem solving are life skills. They are not just limited to, I have a work-related problem and I need to solve them. So let's go through 6 specific skills that if you apply effectively will help you to improve this rating if you haven't already given yourself a 5 on your critical thinking and problem solving. So let's start with and have a look at what are those skills that one is looking at developing. And there's 6 things that you would use interchangeably. Self-awareness, your mental processes, your ability to develop foresight, your ability to listen actively to people, your ability to ask questions, and your ability to evaluate existing evidence. So let's do a little bit of practical work. And remember, what I'd like you to do here is I would like you to use the next 45 or so odd minutes continuously introspecting and reflecting on, how do I do this? And what can I take away today that I can maybe just layer in and add in? And I would like you to think right now of a problem that you're having, that you're experiencing right now, whether it's work-related, personal-related problem. Just take a problem for me and take that problem through this process as we go through the 6 steps. Just think about something where you're needing to make a decision in the next short while, or a problem that is hit that you haven't yet taken through the problem-solving process, and you still need to be able to go through all the information in order. Maybe you're in a situation where you've been avoiding taking an action, where you have not wanted to take an action because you've been unsure about how to go about doing it. Just think about a problem, whether it might mean you're still trying to decide what is the field of studies you want to go into. Maybe you're still deciding whether you want to be in corporate or you want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe you're deciding or you're needing to move and you don't know where it should be. Just think of any of your life or work-related problem that you might have that you'd like to pull through this process, the 6-step process, as we go along. So the first one we talk about is self-awareness. Self-awareness is obviously key to just about everything that you would do. In the context of critical thinking and problem solving, self-awareness is very important for you in being very clear and knowing who you are. And if you look at the work of Simon Sinek, talks about your why, your how, and your what. And if you think about it, just stop and think about it and say, right, but if I'm going to make a decision, an important decision that could have an impact on my life or my work or my career or people around me, then one of the most critical components of that decision-making process would most certainly be around how grounded I am in terms of who do I know who I am. So that is the why. Who are you? And what is your purpose? Why do you do what you do? What do you stand for and who are you? Can you see how important that is in terms of a pillar, being able to guide some of the thinking and the decision-making that you might take as you go forward? Who you are. The how is how do you do what you do? And that, to a large extent, is anchored in your values and who you are. And can you see how that can have a huge impact in terms of the decisions that you make and how you go about solving problems? So what are your behaviors? What do you do? How you show up in work and in an in-personal environment? So think about that, my why, my how, my what, and ask yourself the question, am I grounded? Do I know what is my why, my how, and my what? What do I stand for today? Because those are the things, remember, what you believe in, your values, what you like, dislike, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and how do you approach situations? All of those have an impact in terms of how you're going to think about and then solve problems. So a couple of questions. What are you curious about? What are you curious about? What are you concerned about in life, in society, in the community, in your family? What do you want to create in the world around you? Have you thought about that? And then ask generally, and remember, this is about self-awareness. It's about introspecting yourself and saying, how well do I know myself as a critical thinker and problem solver? But can you see, we're not just asking the question, can you do critical thinking and can you solve a problem? We're saying, who are you in the bigger picture? Because your critical thinking and problem solving forms a part of that. So generally, if you think about yourself, how curious are you? Are you inquisitive? Do you want to know things? Do you want to know more about yourself? Do you want to know more about what's going on around you? Do you want to know more about other people around you? Do you want to understand different things? Do you want to learn more and continuously learn about things? Are you open to change? Are you open to doing things differently? Or would you probe, or would you try to find out more about things, or would you shut them off? And then, are you organized and are you ethical? So self-awareness, number one, we're looking at is just have a look at who are you in the picture of critical thinking. Second one is your mental processes. Your mental processes are, do an introspection here for me as well and say, right, I need to know through self-awareness, I need to know how I go about thinking about things. Do I know how I analyze? Do I know what my prejudices and my biases are and how they could be influencing some of the decisions that I'm making? Or how, if I'm prepared, remember, critical thinking doesn't mean critical to the point of you're not open to. Critical actually means that you are open to a whole variety of things so that you are able to apply a critical process to it afterwards in order to draw conclusions. So how do you receive and process information? How do you listen to people around you? How do you interpret information? And how do you react to information? And let's use a practical example here just to help you look at your mental processes. If you look at the work of Kobus Neertler, who does the whole brain work, creativity, innovation, and whole brain work. I'm going to ask you a question here quickly. And I can't necessarily see all of your answers, so I'm just going to ask you to think for me here quickly. So let's take the pandemic now, the situation that we're in, right? So let us, who of you are the people who immediately your minds went to, what is the stats? What is the South African curve in relation to the rest of the world? What do the curves look like? How many seconds does it take to wash your hands to rid yourself of the virus? Is it really 1.5, 2 meters or more meters social distancing? Who of you, your minds go in that direction? And if that's you, you're the blue. Who of you have, your minds naturally go to compliance, obeyance? We should lock up the people who are not wearing masks. We need to ensure that people are compliant. We have to enforce the policies in terms of the vaccines. We've got to make sure that these things happen. Those are the greens. Yeah. If you're asking the question, what can we learn from this pandemic? What are the possibilities? What are the things? What are the new things that we've learned? What opportunities have presented themselves? What are the positives that have come out from all of this? Then you're the yellow. And then if you're asking the questions like, wow, how has this affected my family? How has this affected my staff, my colleagues? When will I be able to see my family? When can we reintegrate people back into work again? If those are the kinds of thinking that is top of your mind, then you're the red. Now, can you see it doesn't make it right or wrong, but in critical thinking, what helps a lot is to understand where your default goes to, and then for you to understand that actually whole brain thinking is about us understanding where our default is, but then also understanding the benefits of all of the different processes. So at some stages in your thinking process, absolutely, you need to ask the what, which is your blues. You need to be focused. You need to be the realist and the analyst. You need to analyze the facts. You want things to be correct. You need to look at the logic. You need to look at the rational of the problems. We do have the how are the implementers, are the people, the organizers and the preservers. Those are the people who are interested in how do we deal with facts in a chronological order? How can we be critical of ideas? How can we find the fault and the weaknesses in the ideas? Because remember, if you're evaluating a number of alternatives, someone or at some stage in your process, you're going to have to say, I need to look at the positive and the negative of all of these different things. You might want more information about something because in order for you to determine whether it's a good option or not. So you're looking at all those practicalities. And then we're looking at, if we're looking at our yellow, we're looking at where you're needing, can you see now in the brainstorming process of problem solving, you're needing to apply like a big picture. You're needing to become full of ideas, come up with suggestions, speculate things, be blue sky, out of the box, take risks, do things differently or see them totally differently. And that's the home and the space for the yellow. And then we have the who, at the bottom section, which is your socializer, and your who is the focus is very much on the emotions, the feelings, that intuitive feel for people and how things could impact on people. Can you see the difference here, that if we go to the left-hand side, your thinking might be very much more focused on the processes and the logic and the rational. And if we go into the right-hand side, we're looking more intuitively and we're looking more emotionally at the people side. And to come up with good solutions to problems and to think about things, we need to apply actually both of them. So look at your default and then look at being consciously aware through self-awareness as to how I move myself, either through collaboration and communication with other people. So if I know I'm naturally the left brain thinker, then I'm going to associate myself with the right brain thinking people so that in the mix we use all of them. Or else I could even shift myself by consciously being aware of the fact that I need to move myself. And now's the time to be rational, and then now's the time to be more people focused. And you can shift yourself through a rational focus. I know my default is the logical stuff, but I do know at certain stages I need to focus differently on a problem. So if you can, through self-awareness, actually change your own mental processes, it actually helps you to apply critical thinking and problem solving more effectively. Then the third area we have to look at is talk about foresight. So foresight is thinking now forwardly into what some of the potential implications could be of something that you're considering. So it's looking a little bit at, one, how others might feel about a situation or a decision. You'll see that comes in very much into the people side of components. So think about a number of decisions that might have been implemented or tried to be implemented, or maybe it's a decision you've tried to make, and how much resistance you've actually got to that decision, and what you thought was the best decision, the best solution to the problem, and how you thought about it. And then when you thought that other people around you would actually support it, and you found having total resistance. You know, many times resistance to a solution to a problem that you're trying to implement, many times is purely about how people feel about it and the way in which they may or may not have been involved in that process. So if you now can already think, if I now look at how the impact it could have in the future and how people could feel about it, it would actually help me to understand, wow, am I trying to convince someone to do something just because I want them to do it or implement a decision? Or have I actually considered sufficient information to make a decision? Because if people are going to respond that way, maybe I do need to do a bit more critical thinking and think about the situation differently and look at it from different alternative perspectives before I just go ahead and make a decision as such. The second component is determine the possible outcomes of a situation and what could change positively and negatively. So very much a little bit of that devil's advocate kind of process where you are looking at the possible outcomes and being consciously aware of the fact that certain things might have positives and certain things might have negatives. But by being realistic about that helps you to be able to develop some foresight. Okay. Having the foresight to predict how actions might, how certain things might actually work out into the future. And we call that, these days we call that a pre-mortem. You know, we're very comfortable with the concept of a post-mortem. Now, when we talk about a pre-mortem, we're actually saying today, already consider the implications there. So what you do a lot of times when you do a pre-mortem is you have do a little visualization exercise and say, today as I'm standing here, if we should implement X, Y, Z, what could it look like? Visualize it and see what it could look like. And in that visualization, you could be projecting and seeing positives, but you could also be projecting and seeing worst case scenarios, per se. And that's what you're talking about foresight. Foresight is your conscious attempt at future thinking. So you would use qualitative and quantitative information, and you would help develop your ability to be able to read signals and read signs or see trends. And a very important part is your ability to test your assumptions about something. And that helps you through foresight, to visualize into the future and then to say, all right, actually, I need to do more work on this. I need to understand this from a different perspective before I go ahead and to make a decision. Foresight helps you in that whole thinking process and the problem-solving process to stop a little bit and to consider whether you have, in fact, done sufficient work in that thinking process before you move into the decision-making, the implementation process. So remember, some of us, just think about that. When you did your question, you rated yourself a little bit on your 1 to 5 scale. How did you rate yourself on decisiveness? Now remember, decisiveness is not, can I make a decision quickly? Decisiveness is, am I able to make a decision after I've considered facts and I have applied critical thinking, but I have not delayed making a decision so that it becomes procrastination or inaction. So there's that fine balance between how much critical thinking do I apply to get to being able to make a decision and then to implement it, and taking a calculated risk associated, because remember, with VUCA, we do not have all the information at hand anymore. We are needing to make decisions based on foresight and using future thinking and using as much as we can of signals and trends and assumptions to help us to be able to make the best decision based on what we can predict, but everything is no longer known. Remember, we've gone from, if you look at VUCA, we've gone from simple, structured, stable, where much more has been available, to an environment now where we can't predict everything going forward, right? Pandemic showed us that. Now we are making many decisions. Now we are thinking about the situation. We are analyzing the information. We are applying foresight to try and see what it could look like into the future, but it's not foresight based on absolute predictability and available of everything. We cannot use just historical trends. We now need to make certain assumptions, and then we have to test each one of those assumptions as we go along to help us to make the right types of decisions going forward. And that's the element of foresight that we bring in, the ability to look to the future, come back and see what that could mean. And then if we have a look at the fourth component, and that's active listening. Now we talk about listening a lot, and we use it in all kinds of contexts, but then active listening in the critical thinking and problem-solving context. Remember what we said with the 4 critical C skills in terms of future skills going forward? Our ability to collaborate with people and then to communicate, have conversations, communicate in collaboration is actually where a lot of the strength of the information that we need to help us to think critically and to come up with solutions comes together. And there are 2 critical elements associated with that. The one is how well we ask questions. And the other is how well we listen. So let's talk about active listening and think about listening now way beyond just listening in a communication. So many of us listen with the intent to speak We just can't wait until we can interrupt someone to tell them what we know or what we think, right? Many of us have progressed a little further and we listen to understand. We want to know where you're coming from and what you're saying. But if you're looking at listening in the context of collaboration, communication, and really being able to take information from and with people around us, then you listen to grow and you listen to learn. And the key word around that is when you listen with curiosity. It's more than understanding. And to understand means I paraphrase or I summarize what you're saying. But when I listen to grow and to learn, I'm listening. What can I learn from what you're saying? Not what can I discount or what can I say is wrong or what I judge. But I listen with absolute curiosity. What can I learn? So I put myself aside. I'm not listening because of me, what I want to say or what I want to understand. I'm listening so that I can learn information more from you. So we need to listen carefully to what people are saying beyond just, if I understand you correctly, then this is what you said. But I should be able to listen to the point that I can hear much more. Look at practice empathy and being fully observant, present, and mindful in a listening. So test this right now, for example. If you've been listening to me speaking, you could hear the words that I'm saying, and you could take away some information based on what I've said. But if you're fully observant, present, and mindful, then what else are you picking up in my dialogue, in my communication, more than just the words that I'm saying? So would you be able to, in this dialogue, would you be able to test an assumption that you might make about some of the information that we're sharing? Would you be able to say, Jeanette, you've discussed critical thinking, but I sense that you don't want to be here today, you want to be somewhere else. Or Jeanette, I sense that you're very passionate about critical thinking and the topic. I sense that you're really passionate about leadership. Or Jeanette, I sense that you're not present here today, that you're just speaking the words. Can you pick up any of those? That is being fully observant, present, and mindful. That when in listening to someone, you are able to pick up more than just the words that they're saying. Because that curiosity allows you to move into the questioning phase, which allows you to get more information and understand more where the other person is coming from. So it's focused on understanding the other person's perspective. It's focused on, what do you know that you can share with me so that I can learn more and understand the problem with the scenario or how I'm seeing it from a different perspective? That's mindset, right? So if I can gain full understanding of what this problem is, what other people want or need or expect, I actually become so much more effective as a listener. And a more effective listener who is observant, who is mindful, who is present, is able to extract more information in collaboration with others. So as an active listener, pay attention, withhold judgment, don't make assumptions, don't make judgments, don't draw conclusions too quickly when people communicate with you. Listen with curiosity at what they're saying. Be patient. Watch the body language. Now remember, because we are now in a virtual type of scenario, we do not always have opportunities for to be able to see and to be able to see everything in a person, the body language and so forth. We don't see all of that. So that could have an impact on when we're being observant and seeing what other people are doing and saying. So now we need to tap into and be much more aware of what is actually happening around us. We need to tap into our sixth senses of what people are saying when you're in a virtual environment and get to understand more about what they're saying. And then we move into restating, summarizing, paraphrasing to hear what they're saying. And then we move into asking more and effective questions so that we can extract more information from people in collaboration to understand a problem better. So let's talk about asking questions. Ask yourself, how effectively do you ask questions? So we know the types of questions, open, closed, different types of questions that we can ask. But what we look at is if we want to enhance the quality of the questions that we're asking, then we would look at, if you look at the right-hand side, you would look at a funnel. And what that means is that you, rather than just asking questions, that you consciously aware of the fact that when I ask questions, I'm going to look at the quality of the questions that I'm asking. And the funnel means I don't just ask a whole lot of questions and hope to get some information. What I do is ask questions in a very directed way, that I start with a broad question, and then I ask a probing question, and I might probe a little bit more, and then I could ask a closed question, and then I can close it off to actually check that I have the information. So whatever problem you're solving, you could say, tell me more about this problem. You can then move in, okay, specifically, let's look at the implications of what we're going to do with this. What are the implications if we apply this particular solution? So you're probing and you're going into more detail and you're bringing things closer together. There's another type of question that we're also asking. If you can see under listening, we refer to, if you listen very effectively to people, and if you apply your observation skills and you really tune into where people are coming from, we would do what we call reflective questions that refers to emotions and feelings. And that means you are able to ask the question, as I referred to earlier on, that you would be able to ask questions associated, or like, how do you feel? Remember there we spoke about the people, person, and the brains. How do you feel about this potential solution? And how do you think it would impact on you if we had to apply it? It could be, I sense that I've decided on this solution, but I sense that you're not comfortable with that. Those are reflective questions that help you to assign value to some of the information that you might have, and to help you in that foresight capability to determine whether we should proceed with a particular option or not, or whether your thinking around analyzing a problem is effective or not. There's another area that we need to focus on as well, and that is, let's integrate back into mindset, and that is use questions to help you take a mindset of possibility. Remember, some of us are optimistically inclined, and therefore we would much more easily see possibilities in situations. And some of us, from a mindset perspective, might be more problematically inclined, where we would see the problems or the negatives associated with a situation. So the circle of possibility is if you immediately agree to apply the mindset where you're saying that in any circumstance, take pandemic, in any circumstance, I am going to, yes, be practical, rational about a situation or a problem, but I would continuously look at understanding myself, my world around me, and look at what are meaningful solutions. There are possibilities. I will be very pragmatic and very aware of and apply my foresight and understand the positives, the negatives, and I will analyze and I will play devil's advocate. But I will look at the possibility that can come from something. So always look at things and ask yourself, what can I do to change the negative impact? Because you might not make it go away totally, but each situation brings itself some levels of possibility. So how do I bring a possibility to the situation? It's a different perspective and a view. So ask those questions. You know, we use the word a lot, but. I like your idea, but this is the reason why it can't work. Maybe try something like, I like this idea, and we need to investigate it in a little bit more depth because there are possibly some challenges associated. Comes up with an alternative solution. We say, we cannot do this. It's not possible. Move that into, we are unable to do this yet. Now, yet. But we can investigate other alternatives and ways of going about doing that. So can you see it moves right back into the mindset component? We could be in a mindset of negativity. We could move into that mindset of what are the possibilities. Then we go into also, please remember, we talk about feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear says, be aware of the fact, because we've got so much uncertainty, lack of clarification, we don't have all the answers, everything is not predictable in everything that we're doing, that test yourself here and use a couple of these questions quickly. And that is, think of something that you know you need to make a decision about, and you tend to avoid it, ignore it. I'm scared about it. I'll decide tomorrow. I don't want to do it right now. And learn to feel that fear and do that anticipatory thinking. And that is, think about, bring that emotional management in and cope with your fear and anxiety. Many times we don't want to think critically about something because we just don't want to go there. Feel the fear and go there and say, right, I don't want to make a decision about the fact that I haven't been earning an income for the last 6 months and I don't know where that's going to go now that we're going into a third wave. I don't know where that's going to take me. I don't have the capacity to think about that. No, apply your thinking, think about it, feel the fear, head on. So a couple of very important pointers from Susan David that does emotional agility says, remember that you're bigger than your fear. So I need to make a decision. I need to think about this problem. I need to tackle it head on. And I just say to myself, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the best thing that could happen? What would I like? Do I have any control over the outcome? To what degree can I or can't I? Who can I ask for? Can I and who can I ask for help and advice? And if the worst thing happens, will I still be okay? And what is my plan for the worst case scenario? And after I face the situation and I've proven to myself that I can actually get past that situation, what are my next steps? What would I have learned? How much will I be stronger and more resilient? And that's an important part of critical thinking and decision making, because many times we shut off our ability to think critically because we're scared and we're anxious about that. So that's the emotional component side of critical thinking. And then we go into facts versus opinion. Let's get rational again. Go back to that left-hand side of the brain and we go back. And remember, fact is what we can prove. Opinion is an expression, a point of view that cannot be proven necessarily, but it is based on the collection of information and then an opinion is formed. And critical thinking and then decision-making is about asking yourself, well, how can you prove this beyond a reasonable doubt? Are there biases in here that you've applied? Is there sufficient information? Are the facts reliable that you've been given? Are your opinions based on facts, or are they just based on emotional opinions? If we all agree, does it make it a fact, or does it just mean we've expressed an opinion, the best opinion we have based on the information that we have? And ask yourself, what else can I do to verify information to help make a decision? And that brings us to evaluating the existing evidence, which is point number 5, which is evaluating the existing evidence, which really says, now we can go and have a look and see what we have available. This is where you can use things like historical trends. What has been done before? How's it been done before? And is the information that presents sufficient for me to actually use? Remember, we're in a virtual world, so a lot of what we've experienced before, a lot of the research that we might have experienced before might not be exactly relevant. So it's useful to a point, but then we still apply critical thinking to look at things from a much broader, bigger perspective in order to come up with a solution. So yes, have we encountered this project or this challenge or this issue before? And what did we learn the last time from this situation? So we got to ask ourselves, when we look at the pandemic, what did we learn out of HIV/AIDS? What did we learn out of TB? What did we learn out of Spanish flu? But this one's not the same, remember, it's different. But there's certain information, we can evaluate some evidence and information that is available, and we use that. We can use research, we can collect information, but at some point we have to acknowledge that there is that VUCA side of things. There is the unpredictability, there's something new, that there's something different. And that takes us into the next step, and that is, ask yourself, what is my decisive fitness? When and how do I make decisions? Once I've done critical thinking, I've expanded my mindset, I've developed my collaboration communication skills so that in my thinking process, I can collate as much logical and factual information, and then also involve people in decisions and in the collation of information. At some stage, I need to make a decision. Decisive fitness is about shift your decision-making mindset. We've chatted about that now. Be conscious about how you go about making a decision. Give yourself a very specific timeline for a decision. Say to yourself, all right, I'm fearful, I'm anxious, I don't really want to deal with it, but say by Wednesday, a decision is going to be made. Or by next week, Friday, a decision will be made. So give yourself a timeline and pin yourself down on that timeline. Before you make a decision, use your critical thinking, reframe all the different possibilities. Do that pre-mortem exercise we discussed. Use your analytical techniques. Give yourself a cooling off period if you need to. Allow yourself a little bit of time to not make a decision just yet. Ask outside people and collaborate with people to collect. That's your deliberative mindset. Those are the things that you do which is your critical thinking, while you're trying to get to a decision. But at some stage, you actually have to cross the Rubicon, and you actually do need to make a decision. You've gone through using critical thinking, you've gone through problem solving, and you need to make a decision. And then post your decision, that's your implementation, that's your action planning and things that needs to be done. And that can be very process driven with specific agreements in terms of what actually needs to happen. And you pull that through, and then you make a decision. And you make that decision based on all of the information, the facts at hand. Having applied critical thinking and looking at things from totally different perspectives, suspending judgment, allowing yourself to see things, being curious, collating factual information, but also using foresight and trying to predict where it's not that predictable, collecting that and having the confidence that you can do that, and then pulling that together through the problem-solving process, and then making a decision and being comfortable to make that decision, understanding that it comes with some element of risk, but you've already thought through and you are aware of the possibility that everything is not going to go 100% according to plan, because the plan will need to shift because of the environment that we're in and the uncertainties of what we have. But we have the confidence in our ability to be able to think critically, solve a problem, make a decision. And I trust that this will give you some tools for you to think about how you can look at things differently. And remember, it's very much about your mindset, which then gets applied practically in your skill set in implementing decisions. Thank you very much. Timing in decision making, Barnabas. I'm just looking at some of the questions in the chat box. I think, be very sure that you're looking at what kind of decision. Is it a personal or professional kind of decision? Have a look at the impact of what that decision could well have in terms of your life and people around you, and then timing is important, but remember, if you're going to make a hasty decision full of judgments with lack of information, and you're just going to make a decision, then the risks around that could be, and the implications of implementing that could be huge. So balance well the nature of the problem that you're dealing with in relation to not getting caught with inaction. Remember, it's a VUCA world. We will not know all the answers. We have to, as leaders, develop the confidence to be able to apply critical thinking, problem-solving techniques, and then being able to make calculated risks, and having applied foresight, and make a decision. All right, great. Just see if there's any other questions. Okay. Yes, Jaden, absolutely. Remember, we've got like a default, and the default might not only be one of the small, and you could be in two different categories, but you typically either be on the left mostly, or a little bit more on the right, and then it could be top or bottom. But remember, the beauty of this is if you're aware of it, you can consciously develop your ability to develop the other areas. You don't need to be stuck in one place. So if I know I'm logical by nature in the way that I do things, I can learn how to become more collaborative and people focused in the way in which I draw and create information that is beneficial. Okay. Okay, I think those were the key questions. I see yeah. Good. Right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Are there any more? Okay, thanks so much. It was lovely spending a little bit of time with you. I really do hope that you're able to take a couple of these through and apply this in both your professional and working environments and your study environment as well. Remember, you're going to need to apply critical thinking and problem solving in your studies, in the way that you approach your assignments, your case studies. So I wish you all the best, and remember, go out there and make a big impact. Each one of you have the capacity to be exceptional leaders that can make a huge impact on the lives of people around you. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.